I got it, actually. We're all set. All right. All right, so welcome everybody to ABCD-OpenScholar for May. I'm Joe. I work at Harvard Web Publishing. Those of you who didn't get a chance to get a name tag, feel free to come up and grab one. I know there's limited people here, maybe because of the weather, I'm not sure. But today we're going to talk about going live and the steps involved in doing that. And I have to say that we are recording the audio and the screencast just so you can view it later. It'll be posted on our documentation site so you can watch this later, or you can pass it on to other people who want to see it. So, ready to get started? As usual, we usually start off these meetings with talking about getting help with OpenScholar. We have a community forum in which you can suggest ideas to the development team and talk about any feature requests or bugs that you're experiencing. We have OpenScholar documentation website, which you can learn about how to build different pages, widgets, layout, pretty much everything that has to do with the OpenScholar platform. We have a roadmap. Basically gives you a look into the timeline of releases. We have been having releases every 6 weeks, and this will kind of allow you to review the new features that are coming up, along with the bug fixes. This has just been revamped, so when you click on one of the new features, you can read sort of a templated explanation of the feature, the plan, and usually there's screenshots, so that's really helpful. Sometimes when you submit a feature request, they'll end up getting rolled into the next release, so this is a good way to check on the status of that as well. We have platform trainings. You come to the Harvard Web Publishing website, you can sign up for training. Bree is the trainer. She's not here today, but she's also part of this team. So anybody that's in the Harvard community can sign up for free. Then I will say, help desk support. We do offer support to the Harvard community, and basically what you do is just send a ticket to ithelp@harvard.edu. Okay, so now I'm going to give you Mary. She's going to talk about the pre-launch checklist.
Hello, I'm Mary Folk, project manager at Harvard Web Publishing. And Bree and Joe have asked me to present on the pre-launch checklist. And one of the things that I wanted to make sure everyone understood about the pre-launch checklist is that it really should be looked at well before launch. It should really be called something like the pre-create your website checklist. You should really be thinking about a lot of the items on here prior to taking your fingers to the keyboard. So on here, I'm just going to really go over the list that Bree and Nalaja, of course, put together, because Nalaja is our content, digital content expert, and a lot of this has to do with really preparing your content, because after all, that's what your website is all about. There's presentation layer, of course, but really the content is the meat of your website. So the first thing that you want to make sure on the pre-launch checklist is navigation and site structure. So are your breadcrumbs turned on? These are settings within OpenScholar that you just need to make before you launch. You want to make sure your breadcrumbs are turned on if, in fact, you want to use breadcrumbs. Site section navigation is present when a section has sub-pages. So you just want to make sure that your top-level navigation or in your global navigation, that it matches your sub-page navigation. So these are just sort of dotting your I's and crossing your T's. But again, this is just sort of you glossing over it for the launch, but you will have already been thinking about all of that while you're building your site before you launch it. Section navigation appears in a consistent place on each page, right or left column. look to Nilaja because I don't know that that's a definite absolute, but it is something you should consider, that if you have a main navigation that's always on the left-hand side, that's where the main navigation should always remain. You might have things that appear on the right nav sometimes and not other times, but if you have a left nav, you want to make sure it is consistent and that it brings you to the same places. If you're using a drop-down menu for a section, the menu matches the section navigation. Sort of, it's redundant, it's all the different pieces, but you have to think about it, and you want to make sure that your site is, that it looks good. Pages are not deeply buried within the site, preferably no more than 3 levels of subpages. So again, this is something that you should be thinking about prior to building the site. It's part of your bucketing exercises. Even if you don't engage Harvard Web Publishing in your website and you do it on your own, you should still be having sort of a bucketing exercise, know where your content belongs, where you want to put it in the IA, so that when you start to build the site, it sort of organically becomes the navigation and all of that. Site layout, site header contains your department name. These are all sort of, your search box is in the right place, your action navigation is above your search box. Footer contains Harvard guidelines, compliance shield. You want to make sure if you use a Harvard shield that you're doing it correctly because you're in the Harvard network, so you want to make sure that you're following the rules, and you can check with Harvard Publishing. And I always want to say marketing. Thanks. Domain name has been secured through the trademark office. Joe, would you mind just, can anyone just do that?
Well, any third level domain, get approval from the trademark implement office is you need to be Harvard affiliated, and they'll make the determination if you're eligible. Yes.
Third level domain, like something.harvard.edu already has like industry.harvard.edu, we don't need trademark on. Something.harvard.edu.
Yeah. We're just going to sort of run through this checklist, and then we'll open it up to the hordes and the masses here. The website has been set to public before launch. You want to make sure you're, in the back that you've actually made it public. All links work, both internal and external. Hopefully you've been checking that while you've been building the site, but if you engage with Harvard Web Publishing, you'll have a tool called Site Improve. It's a fantastic tool. Peter can tell you about that tool if you have questions. All downloadable files such as PDFs work and have understandable file names. I caution you to be thinking about PDFs and the reasons that you're using them on your website. If you consistently need to use PDFs, you should maybe talk with Nilaja and come up with a different kind of strategy, because you shouldn't have a whole plethora of PDFs on your website. You're serving a different purpose, I think, if that's what you're doing.
I was going to say, one thing to find is that the content of the on the site, manual that saying
Just like to just add, I think Google can index. I think really the way to manage that is that it really is meant to be. You actually have a topic that you want to print out.
Be sure that any embedded code, such as videos or mailing list signups, display correctly. Be sure your forms have been tested, and that would mean the whole process all the way through. If you have an email that is generated through your form or something, you want to make sure all of that's working. Google Analytics ID has been added if you're using, or if you're using Google Analytics, you want to make sure you secure the ID. If you don't know how to do that, there's some documentation on our website. You can learn how to do that, and if there's a place in the settings that you just put the ID. The site has been tested on most common browsers. Now, Richard Brandon from OpenScholar, I'm going to call you out on that. I would say that we don't have to do that because you do that. So if you're creating a site, the thought is, if it's on OpenScholar, that it's going to work on these common browsers. Is that correct?
That's the idea. The most common outliers are that sites that have those getting the right net code.
So that's a good way to think about it. So the platform will work. We've tested that, and we're backing that up. But if you're adding things, if you're embedding code, if you're doing something that we haven't sanctioned, not so much sanctioned, that's not the right word, but we haven't tested, then that's what you need to be testing on your own.
And the other thing I mentioned, to take a look and see how it looks on mobile, just because, the way it was kind of set up, say for example, things for, a little rack at the bottom, I understand what they were happy with how it are orders.
And so that's the next point, so I'll skip over that. Review the Harvard IT security policies and best practices regarding passwords and confidential information. Again, that's really a Harvard employee rule that you need to, if you're in fact representing on the internet and you're a Harvard employee, you should be aware of what the policies and procedures are. You don't want to be posting things that you're not supposed to be posting because ultimately you're responsible because they're assuming that you've read this and looked at it. So it's not really an HWP thing as much as it is being a Harvard employee. Consider backing up your old site in case you need to recover legacy data. I would say that that is pretty important. If you have a site now, copy it. Space is pretty cheap now. You can get a little, one of those little zip drives or whatever they're called, and just back your site up on it. Pages. Now this particular area is one of the parts that I want to make sure you're thinking about before you start creating your website. This is all a content piece, and you want to make sure that you're naming your pages in a consistent way before you're even thinking about your website so that you're in the right spot. You don't want to have to fix things once you've already built your website. That's not a good idea. So you want to make sure your titles of your pages are brief and clear. The landing page for each section has content, not just the subpages. So again, this is when you're sort of doing that bucketing. Okay, so I want everything to be in the benefits section. Okay, so what's the benefits section? So you'd be thinking about what you'd be writing for that, not just the particular sections of the benefits. Test pages or unnecessary pages have been deleted or unpublished. That's a cleanup. That's not so much previous. That's right before you launch. URLs are named correctly. OpenScholar generates the URL automatically, but if you rename a page, the URL does not update automatically. Joe, you want to expand on that?
So when you create a page in OpenScholar, let's say you create a page, you'll use an automatic extension. If you actually change the page title to about us, not that you should, but about us, that URL still remains about us. You have the opportunity to update that URL, but the site goes live and you don't want to be updating the URL because they're indexing. I would just find that out for the URL. It's kind of like a permanent ID for.
And again, it's all about planning. We all want to jump in and start developing our websites right away, but I caution you, you have to plan, you have to think about it, you have to workshop, you have to card sort, you have to do all of that. If you just start building your website, you're in a content management system, and if you need to fix things, it's not as simple as sort of the old days of HTML and file directories. Just so be thinking about that. All pages have been checked for consistent layout, including search results page. That's housekeeping. You do want to make sure your site looks good. You might want to have somebody else look at it. Sometimes if you're on your own and you're creating this on your own, you think it looks great, you're just seeing it over and over again. You might want to ask somebody else to, actually this would be a good forum. People that you meet in this room, you could help each other out. If you're building sites, maybe you could buddy up. I will not check anybody's site unless you paid me, but that's me. No, I'm kidding. You have created a privacy policy page for your site. Is that a generic template, or? The next group is content quality, and there are 3 bullet items on here that I'm not even going to talk about. What I would suggest is if you're ever have some time, go to Nalaja's workshop. She talks all about all of these things, guidelines for writing for the web, that your content is for the web and not, for these long documents that are no longer really what people are looking for when they're on the web. You're thinking mobile devices, and you want to make sure your content is marked up correctly, and again, that has to do with where you're viewing it and all the different devices that you're viewing it on. But Nalaja is really the expert on this, and her workshop is excellent, so you should try to go to that.
Also,
Yep.
check out the Harvard guidelines site, and go to harvard.edu/guidelines, and you had the PDF version of that checklist, so all the hyperlinks will be active, but that also has a section about writing and usability, which is other steps.
So proofreading, I think we're all professionals. We kind of get what that is. It's for all of our documents. Tone is consistent, tense is consistent, treatment of bulleted lists is consistent, capitalization is correct, style of writing is consistent, and content is free of spelling and grammatical errors. I mean, that's what we hope for. That's what we should all be doing. We are presenting ourselves. It is Harvard University. We want to try to do our best. There are spell checks. There's all sorts of things that you can do. Cite Improve, again, I will tell you again that Cite Improve will check your site for spelling errors. It's a great tool if you have a website that you're managing. Images. Images are content. You just have to think about them as content. You want to sort of gather them first, then you want to make sure that they're correct. Nalaja will tell you that, the guidelines, they're also posted, I'm guessing, about the best images and sizes.
Yeah.
Making sure they're correct on the screen. Just pretty much standard stuff. But.
Yeah, and there's a few resources available related to that, but on the OpenScholar site, find ideas for places where you're not going to find images for your website, also some Photoshop tutorials.
The next section is taxonomy, and again, the bullets are content using taxonomy is correctly tagged, and terms and vocabulary are structured consistently. That seems like taxonomy is a pretty simple thing. It's not. You want to make sure that you're really thinking a lot about your taxonomy before you start your website. It's going to help with Google. It's going to help with your search. It's going to help with building your site. It's going to help with sharing information across sites. It's going to help with everything. So thinking about your taxonomy and how you want to bucket things and how you want to tag things is hugely important. Make sure it's correctly tagged and make sure the terms are structured consistently. That's just scratching the surface. You really want to be thinking about your taxonomy beforehand. Social media and engagement. Social sharing icons have been added to the news and events section and other relevant pages. Any methods used to further engage the visitor, such as social media accounts or newsletter signs, are incorporated into the site. Again, glossed over, social media is wonderful, and it's great to have all the little icons on your website. But if no one's updating the social media, if no one's paying attention to the social media accounts, no one's going to go. They're going to click on your Facebook and your Twitter once. It won't be updated, and no one will go there again. So you have to make sure that it's a sort of a three-pronged stool. You want to make sure that your communication for the external world is always updated in every, avenue. If you only have a website, that's okay. You don't have to have a Facebook and a Twitter if you don't have someone to manage it. So, and again, just additional resources. We have wonderful, wonderful resources. These guys work incredibly hard building checklists and tools and, basically making it easy for you to do things yourself. If your website is complicated or complex, I still think it's a good idea to engage with the Harvard Web Publishing Group, and you get some project management, and you get content expertise, and all of that is design help if you need it. But doing it on your own, having this group is wonderful, and it's great networking. So that's it for me. If you have any questions, I have to take off. I have a client meeting. But if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them before I sit. Pretty standard stuff. But, okay, nice to see all of you. Who's up next, Joe?
I think I am. All right. Well, thanks, Mary. Ahead here. Okay. So we'll talk a little bit about custom domains. Generally, when you launch a site, especially a department site, you're going to want to use the standard URL, not the one that comes by default with OpenScholar. We usually call this custom domain. Just move this out of the way. So here's an example. When you create a site in OpenScholar, you define a site name. So let's say your site is about poetry, and that's usually the default URL, projects.iq.harvard.edu/poetry. If you're the poetry department in FAS, you probably don't want to use that. Or if you already have a domain, you're going to want to use your standard domain like poetry.fas.harvard.edu. The good thing about OpenScholar is it does allow you to use any domain that you want to use. You don't have to use the default. Okay. So we talked about this a little earlier, harvard.edu domains. Because there are multiple schools at Harvard, using a harvard.edu domain needs to be regulated by the trademark program. So you actually need to get permission for a third-level domain. You can think of the levels in the domain by each word in between the dots. So poetry.harvard.edu there's three kind of words in there. It's a third-level domain. If you look down in the fourth-level domain, if you add an FAS to that, that's a fourth-level domain, and you don't need approval from the trademark office. If you already have poetry.harvard.edu, and for an existing site, for a new site, you don't need approval for that. Just has to happen one time. So basically, to get approval, you just click on this form here. There's a little form that you fill out, small form I should say, and you just basically fill out some information, and then within 7 to 10 business days, somebody from the trademark program will have reviewed it and will have gotten back to you with an answer, usually yes or no, or maybe yes under certain understanding about using it. So that's pretty much it. Okay. So your site is ready to go live. You want to get a custom domain for your site. How do you request this? So we actually have new documentation on our site, and you basically want to answer these 5 questions. What's your current OpenScholar site URL? What is your custom domain? You also should answer if you want a www redirect. some people just assume if they request poetry.ss.harvard.edu that when someone types in www, that will work as well. You actually just have to request that, and our team can add that in. It's actually an extra step that we need to do. So, is it a new domain? That's really kind of for us to help us guide it through the process. And then, lastly, what date and time would you like the domain applied to your site? Especially with existing domains, they want to schedule it early in the morning when there's not high traffic volume. And then, you can also say as soon as possible. If it's a new domain, sometimes you just want to get it as soon as possible because nobody knows the domain yet. It's kind of can be considered a soft launch. And then down here is the documentation link if you want to read more about that process. So this is kind of internally what happens when you send that request. Step 1, you send it. Step 2, it goes to the Hewitt service desk. They'll check to make sure all the information is there. Comes to HWP support. Then we kind of send 2 tickets to the Network Operations Center, which actually changes the domain records to point to the OpenScholar server. There's another piece that the OpenScholar development team will do, and Richard does often, is makes the OpenScholar site able to handle that new domain and makes sure that requests that come in get redirected to the correct OpenScholar site. So it's kind of 2 things that kind of have to happen at once. But once that's complete, we verify. Actually, our team does the final step usually. Once that's complete, we verify that the site is working, and then we'll just send an email back to you. Definitely want to give it 24 to 48 hours in advance. Sometimes it's hard. Sometimes we get requests like, can we launch with this custom domain within the next hour? It's not easy to do. So definitely give us some leeway, some time to get this request handled for you. And now I'm going to give you Eric, who's going to talk about site settings.
Hi, everyone. And actually, maybe before I speak, I think you had a question about domains that get answered.
Sure. I can.
Go for it. We were just talking about domains.
So I'd like to get a little bit more information about how the domain works. There's the site already has. So my department has a email site with your positioning, and we already have a domain name that I would like to fix. I'm not sure exactly how it would work with switching over.
You saw that request. We take that as a domain apply to your OpenScholar site. So one thing that you would want to consider is your site has different URLs for the pages. You have important pages that somebody types in or they bookmark that they'll get directly there. There's, I think, plan to activate. There's a way to add a few little redirects for important pages. But yeah, you send the exact same process up there. You schedule the time.
And is there any documentation about how the site here has
So Google will automatically, it takes up to 30 days or so, but Google will automatically index the site that is, in this case, poetry website or whatever. What is your domain?
it's HE.SAS.
So eventually Google will go back through your site and re-index it. And as a result, the old links will no longer appear. There is also a Google Webmaster tool that lets you tell Google, look, these links are now broken. Google will then time where you have to wait for all the major search engines to just kind of go back through and check out your site again.
But in a general sense, just literally rerouting URL. So once the DNS switch, once what was it, hub.fas, http.fas, once Joe switches it, it will just point to the website. So it just kind of works.
Yeah, the domain and the website are two different things. You can tell a domain it should point to this website or to that website or that website. And so that's really the change that you're making, is which website should now be described by that domain.
Wherever it is, whatever server it's on, and that's why we talk about backing it out. You want to make a copy of it somewhere. So you have those files, and then you want to retire. You don't want it to be server, and we don't need it on serving pages. So that will happen. But again, one of the things that we didn't mention in the pre-launch checklist, if you're doing this on your own, you might want to think about communication. Who is your audience? You want to let them know that you're building a new website, that perhaps your links won't work. Joe mentioned if there's an important page doing the direct link to link. I don't follow that device. I think that if you build a new website, you should bring it to the home page, and then the user will navigate the internet or your new website. Just two different schools of thought. So and it's a lot easier my way to try to just put everybody to a home page.
Yeah, I think that home page is more important. Websites also designed carefully, so
Agreed.
those pages don't even hang out that anybody has.
And we hold hands so much here at Harvard. We look at big websites. They don't do that. They don't say, "Oh, you look for red shoes on Zappos. They bring the website. We'll bring you right to red shoes." It's not how it works. They expect to trust.
And so this would also be the same process for scholar, open scholar person. Just one thing that faculty members say, they're doing various open scholars, but they don't want to have their domain name changed.
So like faculty name dot.
It's usually people.fas, the Harvard.edu /
Oh, okay.
So that might, they might not be able to take that URL from the scholar because you pointed at the first, everybody on that side will be content. Then we can use it for scholar. But for some, those shared domain, I guess there is a shared domain option with scholar. It's not going to talk about today, but that particular URL, there. So that should. Everybody can commit to using a scholar site for
The reason that's different is people.fas is the website.
the website that's still being used by some staff or so. So we could come up with another URL image.
would it be possible to track that particular URL?
Yeah, so they would, SAS, where people would need to put it in direct for you could do that. They could theoretically do it here.
But then you think that are you creating faculty pages on your site, or are they just keeping the old people that are here?
Well, all of the faculty in my department have the ABCD site, and I'm just over scholars.
So are you moving the faculty to those SAS sites over there?
So again, you could engage with Harvard Web Publishing, and we could help you come up with a plan for your faculty that was different. So it could be governing, whatever it is you come up with. They could all have sites, sub-sites, sites that were related to your net name site. But, I want you to work with me. I don't want you to do everything on your own. Not with me. You don't say agree.
right, so let's go through just some of these fundamental site settings really quick, and then we'll have time for, more one-on-one questions afterwards. So something that I sometimes have forgotten, well, actually once, I've only forgotten to do it once, but when making your site go, generally when you're developing your site, you may have chosen this like anyone with a link option that basically prevents Google or other search engines from indexing it so that your site that's in development doesn't start to show up on the internet. Then once you actually do want the site to become available to the public, you need to make sure that this is all within site settings. On the main administrative toolbar, there's a settings button. You want to make sure that you switch that to public on the web. And really the difference between public on the web and anyone with a link is just that this will now allow search engines to start to actually index it. This is also necessary in order for like the search function on your site to start working. You may have noticed when developing a site, if you've got like anyone with a link or really any of these three selected down here, the search functionality does not work. That's for performance reasons. The idea is that while you're developing a site, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to have the platform like indexing it because you're constantly creating new pages, deleting old pages. But so once you change it to public on the web, then the platform will go through, index your site, and so the search functionality will start to work. That changes this release. So everything I just said about search functionality. So how is that going to change, though? Is it going to be that you have to choose, though, to have it indexed? No?
It'll work just like when it's public.
All right.
There's search results just
Okay. But really this is about making sure that it's visible on Google and other search engines. Thanks, Richard. So Site Improve, this is not about a site setting, but this is, I think Mary mentioned this a couple times, this is a tool that that Harvard Web Publishing that we offer to all OpenScholar sites. It does come with a fee. You can find the pricing information at this link on our website. Along with Site Improve, there's some other things involved as well that go into those pricing options. But really, Site Improve offers a few main items. One is that it'll check for broken links on your site. Another, it'll check for misspellings. And the final one is that it'll really provide some comprehensive overviews of how accessible your site is, so to people who have to use screen readers and that sort of thing. It can provide you with like weekly email reports. It really just is a good tool for basically being able to keep an eye on what's going on your site without actually having to really keep that close to an eye on what's going on at your site. I think this becomes especially important if you have like a team of content editors. If you're the only one who's ever touching the website, then maybe you feel confident enough that you're not creating any broken links. But especially if you've got a team of other people who are editing the site who might not be quite as familiar with OpenScholar as you are, I think this becomes increasingly important because chances of broken links, misspellings, maybe some bad HTML code that makes it less accessible, that becomes more possible. Google Analytics. Again, this is something that if you were to, with our premium support option through Harvard Web Publishing that provides Site Improve, we also will set up a Google Analytics dashboard for you as well. Although having said that, Google Analytics is a free service that Google offers, and it's something that you can all take advantage of and can be used in OpenScholar without actually going in for our premium support offerings. I don't really have time to go into specifics on Google Analytics today. But basically, once you set up a Google Analytics account for your site, then in the site settings, the same place where you change the visibility to public on the web versus anyone with a link, within that site settings, there's this box for your Google Analytics tracking ID. So when you set up a Google Analytics account for your site, Google will provide you in very large font size your Google Analytics tracking ID. You can't really miss it if you set up that account. So you can just paste it right into this box, hit save, and then it'll be fully integrated with your OpenScholar site. If you do want to learn more about Google Analytics, this link here is for an in-person training with Mike Petroff. Mike is digital content strategist with HPAC. If you haven't met him before, he's a really nice guy, knows a whole lot about this stuff. And so I think this is actually going to be coming up in September. So he's going to be providing an overview of Google Analytics. Then also Harvard, another thought that came across my mind is that through our Harvard accounts, we all have access to lynda.com, which provides online video training for basically everything under the sun when it comes to technology. I've generally found it to be really well done, understandable. I think they're pretty much really the industry leaders in this kind of online tech education space. And so that's another place where if you want to learn about Google Analytics from beginner up through more advanced stuff, that's a great place to go. I think that's it. So any questions on what I just covered? Should we kind of come around if you guys have individual questions? Individual questions, it seems like.
And one smaller question related to this. I created I sorted the people section of our website using economy and then have the term right of the, and then I noticed that when you're looking at a person's visual page, you list the taxonomy terms that correspond to them. Is there a way to get rid of that? Just because some people find it confusing.
Tell us, Richard. So she's saying just like on the main people page, how you get.
Yeah, what if you click on a content, piece of content that's sorted right using taxonomy, then the terms that taxonomy terms corresponding to that content are shown at the bottom of the page. Right?
In the full view of that content.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no way to turn this off.
There is a request though for being able to turn that stuff on or off in the community. So if you were to search in the online community for something like, I don't know, display taxonomy, maybe you'll be able to find the post and you can add your comments to that. Okay, do you guys have individual questions? Should we come around? Yeah? Okay.